offerings that you find on top of markolis, which are not conventional offerings. You find a folded beged, a beautiful garment that's folded and placed on top. You find a wallet of money. And those things the Gemara discuss how they are considered mutar. And now the Gemara is going to introduce another concept and mention the difference between markolis and Baal Peor with all the other Avodah Zarahs in the world. So says the Gemara, there is a concept of kalkalin. Amar Rav Papa, the line starts with kalkalin. Kalkalin afilu mayim umelach asur. If you have, Rav Papa says, kol shehu lifnim, sorry, Rav Asi, Amar Rav Asi, kol shehu lifnim min hakalkalin afilu mayim umelach asur. If you have anything that's offered to the Avodah Zarah and is put beyond the veiling area, beyond the curtain that they had in the inner chamber of the Avodah Zarah, that would be asur, because that's not for noi Avodah Zarah, that's not for the beautifying of the idol, it is actual offering. So even if it's salt and water, which are things that are not beautiful at all, it's not considered certainly noyav avodah zarah, still will be asur, because they're considered offerings to the avodah zarah. Otherwise, they would not be in the inner chambers beyond the lifnai velifnim, beyond the curtains, beyond the veil. So says the Gemara, chutz lekalkalin, outside of this inner chamber area, davar shel noy asur, only items of beauty that are considered noi avodah zarah, those are things that are asur, she'eino shel noi mutar. If they're not for purpose of beautifying the avodah zarah, that would be mutar. Even if it's mayim and melach, which are things that are used inside the Mishkan, inside the Beit HaMikdash, still would be asur, would be mutar, if they're outside the veil. Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Naktinon, we hold, we paskin. Ein kalkalin lo lefeor velo lemarkolis. There are two deities, two avodah zarahs in the world, that it doesn't make a difference if something is put inside the inner chamber or outside. Because why do you have a chamber? Why do you have a veil that separates the Avodah Zarah's inner chamber with outside? It's usually made for kavod and for tzniut. That's what it is. It gives more kavod, it gives more of a privacy to the Avodah Zarah, hence is more mechubad. But these two Avodah Zarahs, the whole concept of it is disrespect. I mean, by Baal Peor, you have to go expose yourself and defecate in front of it, and the Kumarim, the priests, are there. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says there was this fellow that went in front of Baal Peor and he defecated, and then he didn't suffice with that. He went and he wiped himself with the nose of Baal Peor, with the nose of the Avodah Zarah. And all the Kumarim, all the priests of Baal Peor who were there, they start clapping and said, in the history of Baal Peor, there has been never anyone that served him as good as this one. Awesome, right? A++. Which again, Rav Chaim Shlomo explains, he says, because the whole concept of Baal Peor was complete dissolving of conscience and feeling of having to play by certain rules. All bets are off. There's nobody that is more respectable than you. You don't have to respect anybody. Even your deity, even your Avodah Zarah, you don't have to respect. So that's the whole concept. So you're telling me that the veil makes a difference? It makes no difference, because it's not for tzniut, it's not for kavod. There is no kavod for Baal Peor. And markolis is the same idea. You have to throw stones at it. There's no kavod. So therefore, if you put something inside or outer area, doesn't make a difference. Now, what does it mean it doesn't make a difference? Does it mean that inside is like outside? Or does it mean that outside is like inside? Because we just explained, by regular Avodah Zarah, if it is inside, if it's close up in the inner chamber, it's asur even if it's not beautiful. In the outside area, it's only asur if it's beautiful. It's two completely distinct laws and areas of tikrovet versus noi Avodah Zarah. So says the Gemara, lemai. If you say, which way do you look at it, says the Gemara? If you want to say that the inside is like outside, and therefore mayim and melach will be mutar if you put them even on the inside, which means anything that's not beautiful will be mutar for markolis and for Baal Peor. Says the Gemara, v'hashta Peor mefarin kameh. By Baal Peor, they defecate in front of it. Mayim umelach lo mekarvin leh. You want to say that's not respectful to bring korbanot for it? Of mayim and melach? You even bring excrement in front of it. Right? We just had before that the guy was feeding excrement in the mouth of the Avodah Zarah. Don't ask questions, but that's how it was. So, of course, they could bring also mayim and melach. That's much more respectable than tzoah. So, therefore, says the Gemara, that's not the case. The way you look at it is afilu chutz kepenim dami ve'asur. That even if you put the mayim and melach, even things that are not of the nature of beauty, of noi Avodah Zarah, even if you put them in the outer chamber, which by other deities and Avodah Zarahs would be mutar being in the outer room, in the outer chamber, by Peor and Markolis would be asur. Because their outside is like the inside. Hence, a chumrah, an additional stringency that comes out by Baal Peor and by Markolis, that even if you put items that are not beautiful, and you dedicate it to the Avodah Zarah, if you find it there, we assume that these are tikrovet Avodah Zarah, they've been offered to the Avodah Zarah, and hence they are asur b'hana'ah. Next Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Avodat kochavim sha'ala gina o mirchas. This is very relevant. Can you benefit, and now this is going to, of course, later on, segue in using the chatzer shel Avodah Zarah and all of that. If something belongs to Avodah Zarah, can you use it? Can you benefit from something that has been dedicated for Avodah Zarah, not as a tikrovet, but as a, let's say, garden that is dedicated for Avodah Zarah? You have a merchatz, you have a bathhouse that's dedicated. Can I go wash in that bathhouse? Can I take a fruit off of a tree in the garden of Avodah Zarah? Now, you ask, what's exactly the question? The question is whether or not you have the concept of hekdesh. When you have Havdil Alfei Avdalot, you have items of Kedusha, you have the Beit HaMikdash of the Mishkan. If you dedicate something, you're makdish something for Beit HaMikdash, it becomes immediately asur b'hana'ah. You cannot use it for hediot, you cannot use it for a mundane personal use. Does that apply to Avodah Zarah? Now, you could ask lots of questions. I remember we had this question many years ago, about a decade ago, when the shul did not have any parking, and when you had events or shiurim, and you needed to use larger areas for parking, and across the street from the shul was a massive land of dozens and dozens and dozens of acres, and half of the area was a parking lot. So can you go make a deal with them, say, well, can we use your parking area when we have events, right? Can you pay them for it? That would be a question that's related to this very Mishnah. Can you use items that belong to Avodah Zarah? So says the Mishnah, Avodat kochavim shaya lagina. If the Avodah Zarah has a garden around it, as a garden or a merchatz, a bathhouse, nehenin mehen, shelo betova. You could use them, shelo betova, What does it mean, shelo b'tova? That means, according to Rashi, let's choose to go with that. It means you're not paying the kumarim. You're not paying the priests of Avodah Zarah, hence you're not benefiting the Avodah Zarah in that way, and therefore it would be mutar. And you cannot use them when you have to pay to the kumarim, to the priests of this Avodah Zarah. If it's without payment, it's free, then you could use them. If you have to pay to the kumarim, then it's asur. How about if this was not only designated and dedicated to Avodah Zarah, but rather he had other ownership attached to it as well? It's in a public area of the Avodah Zarah and another entity. The other entity not being Avodah Zarah. How about that? Can I now use it and pay? So says the Mishnah, then ne'anin mehem ben betova uben shelo betova. Then you could use the garden, the bathhouse, whether you're doing it betova, with payment, or even without payment. Now, we have to understand this, and in just a moment, we will see what that means. Says the Gemara.
Why state without payment?
Just hold on until the Gemara. Avodat kochavim shel oved kochavim. The last din of the Mishnah is, if you have an idol, an Avodah Zarah, of an oved kochavim, then the halakha is asura miyad. As the moment that he is finished making the Avodah Zarah, even before he gets to serve it even once, immediately once you build the Avodah Zarah, once you make it, craft it, and shape it, it's asur miyad, immediately. Mesechet Yisrael, says the Mishnah, an Avodah Zarah of a Jew does not become asur until you serve it. Right? Ein asura at shete avid. Now we have to see this because before, for those who remember, we had an introduction to this a few pages ago, and we mentioned that it actually is machloket tanaim, whether or not an avodah zarah v'goy becomes asur right away, or it becomes asur only after you serve it. And the Gemara is going to introduce all that. Of course, the Mishnah is taking sides in that machloket tanaim, and our Mishnah, as we will see, is Rabbi Akiva. Right? So says the Gemara. Let's discuss one thing at a time. Amar Abaye. Abaye said, when the Mishnah says that you cannot use the garden or the bathhouse of Avodah Zarah betova, with payment to the kumarim, means betovat kumarim, that you're paying. Who are you paying? Says Abaye, that's only talking about the case that you're paying the priests, as we discuss. Shelo betova, and when you're not paying means shelo betovat kumarim, that you're not paying the priests. What does that mean exactly? The Gemara says la'afuke tovat ovdeha deshari. If you have to pay some of the other people involved that are not the kumarim, the guy with the parking key, you have to pay a little bit here, a little bit there. If you're not paying the kumarim, says Abaye, that's already mutar. It depends if you have to pay the priests of Avodah Zarah or not. If you don't have to pay the priests of Avodah Zarah, then it's fine. You don't have to be worried about it. There are those who learn this comment of Abaye on our Mishnah on the second part of this Mishnah, which talks about an ownership in partnership, that the garden or the bathhouse is owned by the Avodah Zarah and by another entity. So says the Gemara, Hayashelah v'shel acherim, if this was owned in conjunction with another entity, nehenin mehem betova v'shelo betova, that you could use it betova v'shelo betova. Amar Abaye, Abaye says betova means betovat acherim, shelo betova, shelo betovat kumarim. What does it mean that if it's owned in partnership, that you could use it betova v'shelo betova? Betova is one case, Shelo Betova is a different case. So says Abaye, let me explain to you what the Gemara, what the Mishnah means. When we say that it's partnership between Avodah Zarah and not, you could be paying even for your use, but you can't be paying the Kumarim. If you pay the other entity, right, that owns it and it's not of Avodah Zarah nature, it's mutar, because you're paying them. Shelo Betova means you should not be paying the Kumarim. If you're paying the Kumarim, would become a problem. So says the Gemara, Betovat Achirim, when it means that you could use it with even payment, means that you're paying the other entity. Shelo Betova, that you could only use it without payment, means that you're not paying the Kumarim of Avodah Zarah. Fine. Man de matni asefa. Now the Gemara says there are two ways of learning this Abaye. The one that learns the wording of Abaye on the Seifa, which is the last thing we just learned, and that you can never pay the Kumarim, even if the garden is co-owned by the Avodah Zarah and another entity. Even though that I could have argued, said, well, my usage is not from the part of Avodah Zarah. My usage is only from the part of the mutar entity, the non-Avodah Zarah entity. You could have, in your mind, you could have logic like that my usage should be only from the part of mutar. And still Abaye says you cannot pay the kumarim for that. So of course, we'll go without saying that if the garden or the merchatz is owned only by Avodah Zarah, of course it would be asur. So according to the second way of learning Abaye's din, the first halakha of Abaye, the first way of saying will be pashut. In other words, even if you have some tendency of leniency to say, well, this entity is not owned only by the church, only by the Avodah Zarah, it's in partnership, and still is asur for me to pay for usage of it. Of course, it goes without saying that if it would be 100% owned by the church, of the Avodah Zarah, that I can't pay them to use it. But if you say the other way around, is not pashut. If you say that Abaye said his halacha only on the Reisha, which means Abaye said, if you have an entity, a garden, a merchatz owned by Avodah Zarah, I can't use it paying them. Maybe that's only when it's completely owned 100% by the Avodah Zarah. But if it is in partnership, I could say, well, I'm not using the Avodah Zarah's part. I'm using the mutar part of it that is belonging to a non-Avodah Zarah entity. So says the Gemara, Aval Asefa, Kevan de'ika acherim ba'ada, because there are other owners with the Avodah Zarah on this entity of the garden or the bathhouse, afilu betovat kumarin, nami shapir dami. Even if you pay the kumarim, still will be mutar because you're not paying for something owned only by Avodah Zarah. Fine. Now the Gemara says, let's discuss the last part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Avodat kochavim shelo bet kochavim asura miyad. If a goy makes an Avodah Zarah, that Avodah Zarah is asur immediately upon completion of the statue, even before you got the chance to serve it even once, right? So says the Gemara, matnitin mani, Rabbi Akiva. This Mishnah works only according to Rabbi Akiva, because we know outside of this Mishnah that there is machloket tanaim whether or not it becomes asur immediately or not. The Tanya, the Braita is like right here. We learned in the Braita, abed tabedun et kol hamekomot asher avdu sham hagoyim. The pasuk says, destroy any place that the goyim served their avodah zarah. Abed tabedun, let's translate it word for word. Destroy all of the place mekomot asher avdu shama goyim, that the goyim served their avodah zarah over there. אשר אתם יורשים את אלוהיהם על ההרים הרמים ועל הגבעות ותחת כל עץ רענן. So the pasuk distinctly and clearly says that we are talking about the case that the Avodah Zarah was served, asher avdu sham hagoyim. So hence says the Braita that that's only talking about the case that bekelim shenishtameshu bahem la'avodat kochavim hakatuv medaber. It's talking about vessels that already have been used in service of Avodah Zarah. Now, you obviously are thinking, where did he get vessels from? The pasuk talks about mekomot, destroy the places. The Gemara is going to ask the question. Somebody 2 weeks ago asked this question, and we said we're going to get to it. Here it is. So says the Gemara, it's clear in the pasuk that it only becomes asur upon serving it. Asher avdu sham hagoyim. That means if I crafted an Avodah Zarah, I haven't used it yet. What's the halacha? Nothing, garnished. Nothing. I don't have to be concerned. So says the Gemara. יכול עשאום ולא גמרום, גמרום ולא הביאום, הביאום ולא נשתמשו בהם? Can it be that if you made it but you didn't finish it, you didn't finish crafting it yet, you finished it, you haven't brought it to the Beit Avodah Zarah, you brought it but you haven't actually served it, any of those stages, can it be asur? Because I meant it for Avodah Zarah, because I dedicated it to Avodah Zarah, because I brought it for Avodah Zarah, but I haven't served it yet. Can it be asur? Says the pasuk, no. It has to be objects that have been used in the service of Avodah Zarah. Avdu sham hagoyim. She'en asurim ad she'avdu. They don't become asur, the pasuk teaches you, until they actually serve them. Mikan amru. From here they said, Avodat kochavim shel obed kochavim, an idol of a goy, ena asura ad shete'aved, does not become asur until it is served. V'shel Yisrael asura miyad, but a Jew's idol would be asur miyad. How do you know that? Because the pasuk says asher avdu sham hagoyim. Only by a goy this halacha applies. A Jew that dedicated something for something, that dedication already is considered that this item became an idol, holds this shita. The other shita disagrees with it. Whose shita is this? Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael says a goy that builds an idol does not become asur until he serves it. A yid that makes an idol, it's asur miyad. And Rabbi Akiva says exactly the opposite. Rabbi Akiva omer chiluf advarim. Exactly the opposite. That means Avodat kochavim shel obed kochavim asura miyad, v'shel Yisrael ad she'taved. By a goy, once he builds it, is asur. By a Jew, it's not asur until you actually serve it. Amar Mar, the Gemara says we learned bekelim shenishtameshu b'hem le'avodat kochavim hakatuv medaber. This is what we just said. That the pasuk that says abed ta'abedun et kol hamekomot, destroy all the places asher avdu sham hagoyim, that they served Avodah Zarah, is talking about vessels that you used for Avodah Zarah, kelim that you used for Avodah Zarah. The Gemara asks the obvious question we just mentioned. Hamekomot ketiv. The pasuk says destroy the places, not the kelim, not the vessels. So how do you read in the pasuk mekomot and then you translate kelim? Says the Gemara, simple. Im elo inyan lemekomot delo mitzeri. If it's not used and usable for mekomot, tenahu inyan lekelim. You use it for something that's usable for. What does that mean? I mean, we already, before we read this inside the Gemara, we already discussed a few pages ago that karka does not become asur. If you decide that this volcano is an amazing, beautiful, powerful agent of God on this earth, and therefore we're going to worship it, the mountain does not become asur. Right? Why? Because the pasuk says, Al heharim velo haharim Elohehem. Elohehem al heharim. they're gods on top of mountains, and not that the mountain itself could become God. We learned this before, right? Karka can never become asur because of an idol. So therefore, if you want to go, break a piece of stone and build your house from that volcano, chazaku baruch, no problem. Even though that the whole country is serving this whole mountain as Avodah Zarah, it doesn't become asur. So we know karka cannot become Avodah Zarah. So when it says mekomot, what does it mean exactly? The makom can't become an Avodah Zarah. So when it says abet tabdun et kol ha-mekomot, destroy the mekomot, you can't say that it means what it says. Now you could ask good questions of why it says mekomot when it doesn't mean mekomot, but it's clear that it doesn't mean mekomot. Because the makom cannot become asur for Avodah Zarah, it's karka. So once you can't use it for karka, you give it to something that could be used for, and that's kelim of Avodah Zarah. I mean, of course, the Avodah Zarah itself, it becomes asur, we know. But this pasuk is adding that even things that are around it, the whole makom is included. Every keli, every vessel that's in that place, that has been used, asher avdu bahem, that they served the Avodah Zarah with them, which is a direct reference to the kelim of Avodah Zarah, all of that also is asur, on top of the Avodah Zarah itself being asur. So says the Gemara. Now, I'm just going to read the last line of what we did. That the mountain cannot become deity. Use it for kelim. From here they said that they don't become asura until they're used, because it says asher avdu bahem, that they already used them to serve the Avodah Zarah. And if it's not used, it's not going to be asur. V'shel Yisrael miyad. And from that same pasuk, you learn that's only for Jews that's like this. For goyim, for goyim that's like that. For Jews, as soon as they finish making it, it becomes asur. So that's the shita of Rabbi Ishmael. Now we're going to discuss how Rabbi Akiva knows that exactly the opposite is true. Seems to be pretty convincing what Rabbi Ishmael just said. We're going to discuss in the next shiur what Rabbi Akiva holds, which is really the shita in our Mishnah.